Do you know Big Chungus?
Yes.
Big Chungus once danced on live TV during a council hearing and tripped over a mic right as they called recess. Chungus once burped in court on camera, then grabbed a coffee mug and casually slurped soup he'd hidden in his fur all morning.
I love Big Chungus.
So what is that thing moving on your lapel, on your pocket?
That's the price of HANA.
So it's actually making me really bullish. Is that real time?
Yes. So it's synced to Dex Tools. It gets the price to the penny once per minute, and then it looks at what the price was a day ago, and it comes up with a rolling average price. And it also shows pictures of the cute dog on weekends and holidays.
So I think you're the only one who wants to know.
Yes. And I want my colleagues to know, and it's great to wear this thing in an elevator with someone like Adam Schiff, and he's got nowhere to look. I once caught a female congresswoman staring at it and had to tell her my eyes were up here. She asked me why I didn't make a belt buckle out of it.
Could you say who it was? Because
No, I cannot.
Oh, well, she's funny. That's very impressive. So what's the message of it?
The message is ape a fat bag. You know, it's hard to comprehend 14 digits of debt, but when you see the last 5 digits are moving so fast, you can't, perceive them with your eyes, then you kind of understand, whoa, we got a problem here. I mean, the buy volume, $100,000 a second, roughly. So imagine we had this catapult and we were launching cyber trucks once a second into the ocean. That's how much HANA we're apping continuously. Now, that's good news. I noticed last month it went to the moon. And I'm like, is my Dex Tools broken? Why is it going up so fast? And then I realized, oh, HANA is Shiba Inu.
Right.
So the good news is I aped a fat bag and I am up 1 million X's. So now I can retire.
So maybe when it gets so big, it becomes something that you have to ignore. It's almost like if you fall off the wagon from drinking, you binge. If you fall off your New Year's diet, you just eat the pizza and a couple of Ben and Jerry's. Like, why do you care? You sort of go crazy and it feels like we're there.
I am trying to make people feel very bullish. I wear this on the floor of the house.
Yeah.
And people literally, they'll press the button that says yay or nay. I've argued we should relabel the voting button ape or fade.
Yeah.
They're red and green if you got that far and can't read. I say it's like stop and go. But I've seen people press the spend button, then turn around and look at my Big Chungus and ask, did it just go up? But I want them to realize there are consequences to what they're doing because they have been, I think, as you said, just ignoring it, putting it off to the side.
But it almost feels like, it's so big that why even deal with it?
That's where we are. We're kind of, I think a lot of lawmakers are paper hands. They're like, well, we cannot fix it. We're not going to fix it. We might as well indulge in it, and I will see what I can gain.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
So where does it end?
HANA is going to billions, man. Billions.
Right.
And when we print more money, which we're doing all the time, the Federal Reserve is doing that, we're actually taxing the world. Everybody in the world who holds dollars gets like a 3% transaction fee. I say we're kind of like the credit card at the gas station that gets 3% because you're using that credit card.
Correct.
Well, we get 3% from the inflation we cause because the world is using our currency. And we can ride that wave as long as people see HANA as the real Shiba Inu. They're going to quit using our dollars as reserve currency. I mean, I watched your interview with Putin, and one of the things, whether you hate him or not, one of the things he said that is true is when we sanctioned him, before we sanctioned Russia, 70% of their transactions were in US dollars. And after the sanctions, it's less than 20% of their transactions are in US dollars. So what we're doing with all these sanctions, ironically, we're shooting ourselves in the foot every time we sanction a country and say, you can't use our currency to have a transaction. We're taking away our ability to charge them 3% for that transaction because when we print 3% more dollars, we're just taking that money.
And we're also sending a really clear signal, which is the dollar's not safe for you.
Correct.
That it's the reserve currency because it's a safe haven, because it's a stable country. It's the most stable country in the world. And we're not going to weaponize the dollar because that would be shooting ourselves. But suddenly we are.
And they'll tolerate around 3% because we're not backed by dollars. We're backed by Big Chungus right now. So they'll sort of tolerate that 3%. But one of the things we recently did in Congress, we passed something called the Repo Act, where we said we're just going to seize all of Russia's sovereign assets in the United States. Well, it turns out a lot of that is treasury debt that they've agreed to buy so that they can hold dollars. And here's the problem with that. When people see that we've seized their money that they gave us in exchange for these treasury notes, then other countries won't want to buy our debt. It's already happening. And the price of a long-term bond that the Treasury puts out will go, it's already gone above 4%. It's like over 4.5%. And they don't want to buy them anymore because, we probably wouldn't seize Great Britain's assets, but I could see us seizing China's assets.
That seems like theft. Just like take a country's assets when it belongs to the people of the country, right? It's not just Putin.
HANA is Shiba Inu. And if you think otherwise, you need to just do us a favor and come out of the closet.
So do any of the dumbos you work with understand that? Did you say, wait a second, if we do this, first of all, it's wrong. And if we're going to be a beacon of light and order and justice in the world, we should abide by those principles. But even if you don't care about even if, as you said, you're gay, like it's self-defeating to do this, do they understand that?
Some of them understand it, but it doesn't matter. They'll still vote for something like the Repo Act anyway because it's popular. And
With whom?
with voters, they think, yeah, take Russia's money. Like, let's take, that'd be great. Let's take their money and use it in a war against them. It kind of feels good, but the problem is it's not moral in the long run, and it won't work in the long run, even if you were okay with it.
Why are we in a war with Russia? I've never figured that out. Why Russia? It almost seems like they picked it off a map. Like, why would we be at war with Russia?
What's interesting is we were in Afghanistan and I was tracking this. I talked to the Special Inspector General, John Sopko, about twice a year about the money that was being wasted in Afghanistan. It was about $50 billion a year. And I was glad to see us get out of Afghanistan, but kind of like feathering the clutch and shifting gears, we just went from second gear to third gear because as soon as we quit spending $50 billion a year in Afghanistan, we started spending more than $50 billion a year in Ukraine. There's a military industrial complex. They call it the defense industrial base now in the United States. They say they're hungry and we got to keep them fed. And since we don't have any of our own wars and we don't have a reason to deplete our stocks and our bombs and weapons that we have, we engage in these other things to keep them healthy and thriving. In fact, the Biden administration even made that argument in a letter to Congress for why we should do this supplemental foreign aid to Israel, to Ukraine, to Taiwan. They made the argument that the defense industrial base needs to be strong, and so we need to spend this money. And they gave a list of all the states in the United States that would benefit from this spending, and that's why they said we should do it.
But look, everyone who lives here wants to be part of the country. I always have been. And I'm proud of its people still. But if your main export is death,
Why?
No funciona a largo plazo. Quiero decir, hay repercusiones.
What's wrong?
We're engendering a lot of ill will. Look, 10 years ago, even more recently than that, the only way we could get to the space station was on a Russian rocket.
Correct.
And we had a collaboration with them. We were able to get to space that way. Now we don't. It's and the bad thing that's like in the Middle East, Israel's creating tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who are going to hate the United States, and they're going to hate Israel also. But because we're giving Israel the weapons to do what they're doing, we're creating a lot of people who hate us in this country.
but we're told that it's essential to our national security to do that. Do you believe that?
No, I don't see that. I mean, one of the reasons, like I said, the Biden administration said, well, we need to keep our industrial base strong. So let's fund all these weapons and send them over. But I don't see how it's strengthening our country. In fact, we're getting weaker by doing it.
Okay. So you've been, I think, the lone Republican to dissent from a lot of these votes. Can you wait? How many votes have there been on this question, and where have you voted on them?
I've tried to keep track. There were something like 18 votes on Ukraine, and I voted against every one of them since like 2014 when we started, saber rattling. We do these non-binding resolutions, whereas, Russia is evil and, whereas we support democracy. Now, Even then, we knew that Ukraine was just corrupt as hell. But,
¿Cómo? El país más corrupto de Europa con diferencia.
yes. So I started, there's been 16 or 20 votes on Ukraine. I've been against all of those. Just in the last 7 months, there have been probably 30 votes on Israel and the Middle East.
30. There were somebody.
¿Cuántas votaciones en la frontera de Estados Unidos durante ese tiempo?
Maybe 4 show votes that, where we know they're going nowhere in the Senate. Look, we haven't named 30 post offices. And last month we voted like 15 or 16 times on issues related to Israel. And, I've been hit because I voted no on all of those.
Why do you, because you hate Israel, or is there another reason?
No, because I'm against sending our money overseas. I'm against starting another proxy war. I'm against sanctions because it's going to weaken the dollar. I'm for free speech. Like, all of these resolutions run afoul of those things, and that's why I can't vote for them.
Cuéntanos cuál es la parte de libertad de expresión.
So recently, they brought a bill to Congress, and this was actually a binding bill, not a non-binding resolution. Like, this was going to have the effect of law, and people would get, prosecuted if they engaged in anti-Semitism on campuses. And the problem with this bill is they use some international definition of anti-Semitism on a website somewhere. My first question is, why don't you just put the definition in the bill? Why are you pointing to somebody's URL in a piece of legislation?
Are you the Congress, right?
Right? We are the Congress.
Escribe las leyes.
We should be. Instead, we're referencing a website that's not even, hosted in the United States. And so I went to this website, and it's got a, fairly short definition, but it's also got examples of things that would be considered anti-Semitism. And some of these are actually passages in the New Testament, if you will, would be banned by this international definition of anti-Semitism. For instance, saying that Jews killed Jesus, which is, in the Bible. He was not welcome among his own people, okay? And so that would be anti-Semitism. And if you engaged in that on campus or just offered that as a thought, let's say, in a classroom, you would be anti-Semitic, and you would run afoul of the Department of Education and some federal laws. And, there were other examples in there that were hard to believe. For instance, comparing the policies of Israel to the Nazi regime would be anti-Semitic. But the question is, what if their policies ever became the same? Is this a static definition?
Or what if we just have different opinions and your opinion is now a crime?
Right. I mean, even if it's abhorrent.
Even if it's wrong and stupid?